Good afternoon, everybody. We are so excited to have you all join us today. My name is Rita Lee. I am a general internist and I work in the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement as the director of the Health Equity and Action Lab. And I also work at the School of Medicine directing their Health and Society, which is a health system science curriculum. And we're super excited that you are joining us today. We want to welcome all of you that are joining us in person, as well as the folks that are joining us via Zoom today. Before we get started with our panel discussion, I just wanted to go over a couple of facts. I'm trying to negotiate mic and PowerPoint at the same time. Okay. So today we're celebrating the Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. However, when we think about what that term means, the reality is that Asian and Pacific Islander really is a broad group of individuals that come from multiple different backgrounds, ethnicities, religions, etc. And you'll see all of these terms that people with Asian ancestry and Pacific and Islander ancestry fall under this single umbrella. And it was originally created as a way of trying to create solidarity within the community, as well as to have some increased power. Because of the discrimination that was traditionally faced by individuals of Asian and Pacific Islander descent. However, by embracing the label AAPI, folks also have the opportunity to strengthen and expand their community, their power, as well as understand the diversity of this group. However, this is a very diverse group, and sometimes there's challenges in lumping all of these groups together. Okay. APIDA is one attempt at generalizing both of these terms, Asian American and Pacific Islander. And it does this by specifically highlighting the inclusion of folks with DESI or South Asian ancestry within the community. And what you've seen is there's terms like Asian American, and that was originally to highlight that Asian individuals who are living in the United States are also Americans. As well as Asian diaspora, again, reflecting the general background of individuals who come from this geography. But when we really look at the diversity of what is included in AAPI, right, more than 22 million people of Asian descent live in the United States, making us approximately 77% of the nation's population. And what gets counted under the Asian Pacific Islander umbrella is over 50 different ethnic groups, 50, speaking hundreds of different languages. And this graphic shows the diversity and breakdown of the variety of ethnicities that exist within the Asian Pacific Islander community. Okay, and you can see that we are not a monolith of individuals, and traditionally Asian individuals have been lumped together, which kind of decreases the awareness of the diversity that is within this group, as well as the different needs. Traditionally, when we think in the DEI world, like Asians are not underrepresented in healthcare or science fields. However, if you look at the breakdown within these groups, there are disparities both in income as well as employment, as well as representation within medicine and healthcare. And Asian Americans or the Asian diaspora are also the most politically underrepresented group in the United States when we look at kind of the number of representatives per population that is in the United States. Okay, so with that background, we'd like to go ahead and move to our panelists. Okay. So what we'll do is, if we could start with Fernand here on the left, is if you could introduce yourself, your pronouns, your ethnicity, and other identities you're willing to share with this group.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. This is very meaningful, personally and professionally. I'm Fernand Lubigan. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm also one of the psychologists in the faculty and staff of mental health clinic. So that's my role here in Anschutz, and I've been here a little over a year. Prior to that, I was faculty at University of Denver, the Graduate School of Professional Psychology. So my ethnicity is Filipino American. I identify as a cisgender male, pronouns he, his. I identify as heterosexual. I'm also an immigrant. I immigrated here from the Philippines when I was 9 years old, and we immigrated to the San Francisco Bay Area. Identify as spiritual, non-disabled, and I'd like to think I'm still within the middle age range and within the middle class. Thank you.
So I guess I'm next, right? Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you all for being here. And thank you for having me here as well to share with you my journey since I came from Vietnam. So I came here in my late 30s just to join my husband. And I was a successful dentist in Vietnam. And I was endodontist who specialized in root canal treatment for 6 years in Vietnam. And then I joined my husband here. I went back to dental school to gain my DDS degree. And after my DDS degree, I went on and specialized in prosthodontist. And now I becomes a specialist in implants, dentures, crown, bridges. We call prosthodontist. Okay. And I joined the faculty staff. I joined the dental school at CU Anschutz as a prosthodontist faculty for more than 5 years now. So I think that's it for my journey. And thank you.
Can you share your name?
Oh, my
And
name
pronouns?
is Viên Soang Nguyen. Nguyen is the last very popular last name in Vietnam. So a lot of people, they might pronounce as Nguyen, but it's not correct. It's Nguyen. If you say when, it's okay. It's acceptable. I know my name is a little bit difficult to pronounce, so I'm very accepting. So, and my first name, if you call me Viên Soang, it's fine, but I just make it short. Viên, Vien, Viên. Thank you.
Well, my name is Ellen Wu, and my legacy is in the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. My great-grandfather was in the Denver area once known as Chinatown, which is where Coors Field is now. And so my great-grandfather was here in Denver, but then he left and he went back, started a family. And I have history of immigration. My great uncle, my granduncle, his son immigrated to Denver via Angel Island in California, where he was interned. I mean, I don't want to say detained because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. My father immigrated in the late 40s, and then my mother immigrated in 1958. She was 6 weeks from delivering my eldest brother. We were all born in Denver at Rose. We grew up in the Denver area, and we attended public schools. So it's deep, the immigration and all the issues related to immigration are deep. And as a matter of fact, May 6th was the 140th anniversary of the signing of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which is the only immigration law that has targeted one group, one minority group. And it is still considered the most racist rule ever in the history of the US. So I also, so growing up in the Denver, Aurora area, I also am an alumni of CU. So, and in all of these issues and that are occurring, it's generational racism for me. It's been not only in education, but also in the workplace. And it is also been, and it has really, how do you say, amplified in the last few years. Because I don't know how many of you have experienced it, but it's out there and it continues. And I think that this is a beginning, and I hope it's not the end of bringing awareness and education to stopping the hate that is out there, that has been out there. And it's deep and it's personal. And part of it also is that, and it's been said many times, and that we can, as Asians, can protect ourselves as much as we can with the vaccines and the masks, but we have not been able to protect ourselves from the taunts, the trauma, I mean, I personally have been attacked. So, and I have heard the words related to in the last 2 years that it's all my fault. I've been coughed on. I've been, and I've heard of people that have been spat on. There's been vandalism. So it's true. And I just, and I sign off in correspondence with my relatives, not with love and stay safe. I mean, it's not just on the West Coast or the East Coast, it's happening here. So
Thank you for sharing that while you have the mic. One of the things that has been demonstrated to decrease bias is to get to know each other a little bit on the individual level. So I'm curious if you could share something unique about yourself and your culture. We'll start with you, Ellen, and then pass it back down.
I think uniqueness growing up basically in two cultures, because it's been growing up and not knowing and trying to maintain who I am and my background, my Chinese heritage. And it's really funny because it's been said that I'm too Chinese to be American, but when I go back to China, you're too American to be Chinese, and it's really hard. But I've tried to keep that going because it is so much part of me, because you feel when I'm with family, then, I am Chinese. I really am Chinese. And in a way, I kind of get angry with the Asian women who want to have eyelids and want to have nose jobs. And, it's like, consider yourself unique in that way because you are who you are, and to honor your elders and your ancestors, which I try to do in doing this, to make sure that we remember our elders and ancestors for what they have done and what they have brought forth for me to make me be who I am.
Thank you. Bien-Song?
So talking about uniqueness about myself. It's hard for me to say it in one single word. I think just being myself is unique enough. Um, because it took me 14 years to be reunited with my husband. So because of the immigration policy and so on, so we were apart for 14 years. So during that 14 years, a lot of difficulties we both have to overcome. And then when I came here, being a woman without English, because I never learned English in any school or institute, I learned Russian and French in Vietnam. And then I came here in my late 30s without English, but I'm determined. I want to be a dentist again. So I have to learn English by myself. Took some courses for speaking and listening and so on. But get back to school and specialize, change my specialty from one to the other. And now maybe this is somehow unique because I'm the only female prosthodontist faculty at the dental school and also the only board certified prosthodontist in the building. So, okay, in terms of the culture, I think my culture is very heavy um, in the way people respect each other. And whoever, regardless how successful you are, how famous you are, but if you are younger than the other, you have to show your respect to the older people. So I think that is somehow unique in my culture, and I do keep that deep in myself. So for example, when I just started the dental school, when my professors talking with each other in the hall and I need to cross them, I have to bend and then go across them. And now maybe I'm more blending in the American culture. I realized that I didn't do that anymore or that often, but it's still inside me. Thank you.
Unique about me, I guess the first thought that comes to mind is representation really does matter. And I believe this is still, sadly, a unique characteristic. As I mentioned earlier, prior to joining Anschutz, I was a faculty member in the Graduate School of Professional Psychology at DU, as I was in the PsyD program. And to the best of my knowledge, I was the only Filipino-American academic psychologist within the Rocky Mountain region, which is just stunning, absolutely stunning. Certainly, nationally, there aren't that many of us, but there's certainly more in California, where I'm from, and some in the East Coast. There's actually a very highly respected Filipino-American psychologist on faculty in Alaska, of all places. But it was a status that I both was proud of, but also very saddened by. So that's just one of the, I would say, unique characteristics. Now culturally, the Philippines, I believe, is distinct in one way. Although colonization was certainly prominent within kind of what we broadly categorize as Asia. I believe that the Philippines is unique in that we're the only country who were colonized by the Spanish, and we were colonized for well over 300 years, and that's had profound impact on our identities, from the language to many aspects of the culture. religion and so forth. So I'd like to think of myself as, in a sense, a cousin, if not a distant cousin, to my Latinx relatives. Something that is also unique to the Philippines, which I think inevitably has implications culturally, is that the Philippines is comprised of is an archipelago comprised of approximately 7,100 islands. When I say approximately, it depends whether it's high tide or low tide. And I kid you not, that is actually the case. So.
Great, thank you. So for a long time, as we talked about in the introductory slides, the Asian community has been lumped into kind of this singular entity when the cultures and heritage that falls under this umbrella is actually quite different. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this kind of lumping together versus splitting apart into each unique category. Can we start with Vian Song in the take turns going first?
Okay, so lumping to me somehow challenging because even between Vietnamese culture and Chinese culture, we are not the same. We are similar, but not exactly the same, right? We still have to be interacting together and find the same roof for us, right? So ideally, we want to be lumped, but I see the challenge in lumping. So, but on the other hand, I don't want to be separate either, right? But if we split and we have smaller group, it could be easier to manage, but we better have a big event when we gather all the small group together. So in my opinion, that is a combination of splitting and lumping. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Ellen, please.
Okay.
You know, I've been thinking about this a lot. And yes, there are differences even and people don't understand this because they say, well, you speak Chinese. My answer has been, okay, I don't speak Mandarin, I speak Cantonese. And then within Cantonese and Mandarin, there are a lot of dialects. I was raised, my parents spoke what we have called the village dialect. And until you speak to people that understand that, then they don't understand. I mean, in dealing in healthcare, I have encountered that a lot because with my parents and with my relatives, the first question is, well, who's going to speak to them? Oh, we have interpreters. Are they live interpreters? Oh, no, it's by the phone. We have a translation service. And I ask, well, is it Cantonese? That's the reaction. So yes, there are distinctions and we need to make those distinctions. And yes, we need to deaggregate the data because we are not the same, even in economic status, even in healthcare needs, even culturally in healthcare needs, there are differences. But as a collective group, we need to be together. And I think that movement, we really need to be strong in that movement. And we need allies that believe that we can do it. We can bring changes. And this is my personal little gripe that has surfaced in the past few years also, is that and it goes back culturally and historically that we are not people of color. Because I look at the Crayola flesh color wheel, I don't fit on any of those. I look at the Crayola 64, I don't fit in that box. And I think that it's really become a term to lump us together because we've been seen as the other. Because when you look at it, people of color, well, what color am I? What color is Fernando? What color is it? What color are we? And it's just been used, and that's why we need to deaggregate it. We need to deaggregate that term, that we are Asian. We are Asian Americans. We are Chinese American. We are Vietnamese American. We are Filipino American. And there are Asians that are not Americans because they fall under DACA. DACA. They fall under DACA also. So I think that by changing terms and acknowledging who we are and what groups we are, then we can start those changes, and collectively we can bring on change that's needed.
When I think about this issue, the first thought that comes to mind is a both and, rather than an either or. I just want to kind of piggyback on the points that my co-panelists have mentioned, and also I'll get back to the statistic that was on the slides a little while ago, that the AAPI community by and large is the least politically represented. So that's what comes to mind when I think of the advantages of lumping us together, because obviously there's power in numbers. However, I think the stereotype that we all look alike then feeds into this, or rather, let me put it the way, the argument of lumping us together reinforces, sadly, the stereotype that we all look the same, we all look alike. There are, I think, tremendous advantages to be gained by deaggregating us, not the least of which is to really honor and respect our individuality. And when I say individuality, I mean it on multiple levels, not just as a person, but also groups and subgroups. And just by way of example, in terms of language, which some of my colleagues already mentioned, just within the Philippines, although there is a national language of Tagalog, there are many other both dialects and distinct languages, distinct to the point where I grew up speaking Tagalog. I could not understand somebody who spoke, for example, Ilocano or Visayan. And those are just some examples. And I think the idea of lumping us together really does, unfortunately, dilute those really important distinctions. While it's on my mind, I guess the other thing I want to mention is the notion of colorism. Colorism is alive and well certainly within the Filipino community. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with that term, the simple version is that the correspondence of the lighter complexion you are, and which usually corresponds to the more European features, the more attractive, the higher status that you are afforded or regarded. And within the Philippines, there's quite a range of shades of complexion, kind of picking up on the other theme that came up. So that's something else that I would like to sensitize the audience, particularly in terms of really appreciating differences both between and among groups. So, thank you.
Great. So how have you experienced being Asian in America? Maybe Fernando, we could start with you.
How much time do we have? That is such a broad question. You know, what comes to mind is it depends on context. So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm forever grateful to my mother for my father had passed away, which was one of the reasons we immigrated. I'm so grateful to my mother for choosing the Bay Area to immigrate to as opposed to, say, someplace in the Midwest. No offense to anyone who identifies as being from the Midwest, but suffice it to say that it meant a lot to me that when I arrived at 9, that I was not, I felt different enough, but at least there were some other fellow immigrants who also didn't speak English very well, if at all, fellow Asian immigrants, and also some fellow Filipino immigrants in the Bay Area. So my experience of being Asian initially was certainly that of an outsider. Imagine, a 9-year-old immigrating to a whole new country and all of the changes that are inherent in that. And I remained in the Bay Area until I left for grad school. I went to grad school in Boulder. And by and large, my experience of being Asian in the Bay Area was actually pretty good, particularly in that area, with that era, I should say. I started grad school in 84, so I immigrated in 69. So from 69 to 84, I didn't feel terribly out of place in the Bay Area. Then I felt like immigrating, an interesting slope there. Moving to Boulder in 84, it was a shock. It was quite a shock. Sadly, Boulder has not changed that much over the years. And that's when my experience of being Asian really, my experience of being an outsider was tremendously heightened. And although over the years, Colorado in general has increased its diversity, I still feel like an outsider in Colorado. And whenever I visit home in the Bay Area, it's just, as soon as I land at the airport, it feels a home again. I hear my language, I hear languages that I'm not familiar with, and I don't feel so othered. And I guess one last thing is I want to highlight I don't think this is unique to me, the status of Asians and Asian Americans in general of being the perpetual foreigner. To this day, I still get questions or comments about the way I speak. I don't speak with an accent, at least not one that's discernible. If I had to place it, perhaps California accent. But just real briefly, let me end with this story. This happened when I was in grad school. I was meeting a friend of mine for lunch in Boulder, and I walk into the restaurant, and the bar, the way the restaurant situation, the bar's right there, and my friend hadn't arrived yet. So I said to the hostess, "Is there anybody here waiting for me?" So apparently, this gentleman sitting at the bar had started drinking early because he says to me, totally unsolicited, "You speak English good." Okay? And I was stunned. And to this day, I regret not having had the presence of mind to give this retort, which was, "Thank you, that makes one of us."
Okay, so I grew up in the Denver area, and it was very limited in the culture. But back then, when you were a Chinese person, the Chinese community knew the Chinese community. They knew people. And funny thing, and they had events, they had Chinese New Year events, they had parties. And so they knew each other, and they knew and funny, growing up, my parents knew a lot of other people from China or Hong Kong, and they knew people, so there was a connection there. And they slowly, expanded, but and and they spoke Cantonese. I mean, that was another little link. But they also, but there was limited in grocery stores, and I don't know if any of you have been down to the Pacific Mercantile. My parents, they knew, I mean, I knew, and I remember going there, that they had limited Asian commodities, but my dad, the guy who, started it, George, we called him George, and he was grandpa. I mean, I remember seeing grandpa, and there was Sam, who was his son. And I remember seeing them, and I remember the old store and all those things. And the food was limited, and a lot of it was homemade. I mean, my God, it just to see the home, remembering that. And then when the Far East Center and all those things started showing up, my parents, you could just see their eyes. I mean, we would spend hours, and my parents would, oh, look what we found, and look what we found. And I was like, okay, Mom, we've got to go. It's an hour now we spend in this grocery store. We can go now. But I mean, my parents were farmers, and they grew vegetables in the backyard. They shared vegetables and those things. And, but elementary school, I mean, talking about an awakening, I didn't learn a word of English until I went to kindergarten. Even though I had two older brothers, did they share English with me? No. But, it was like I had to be taught that my name was Ellen. And I was given, that was the name on my birth certificate, because that was what is on the birth certificate, that you have to have an Americanized name. And, I know a lot of Chinese families that their parents would not let their children speak speak Chinese. I do not know if it was because of fear of that you would have a Chinese name, or if it was to assimilate. So there are my generation Chinese children that do not speak or understand a word of Chinese. Mine is limited because there were no Chinese schools, but I can get away with it, enough. And as I said, there's a lot of people that don't understand that there's a difference between Cantonese and Mandarin, or even the dialects in healthcare, in even legal issues. Even in dealing with the police, I have asked, okay, same story. How do you deal with somebody who does not speak English, and they speak, for my experience, Chinese? And they'll say, well, we have the interpreter. Once again, what do they speak? And then once again, they're dumbfounded. They don't have the answer. But I wasn't even exposed to Kraft macaroni and cheese until I was in middle school. But the school pizza was very, very good. So, and I can remember being in school some days in elementary school, and I would have thoughts in Cantonese, and I would just blurt out these thoughts in Cantonese. But even, in education, I almost failed a lesson one time because the lesson was do a family crest. I looked at the teacher and said, what is a family crest? And then those in healthcare, I don't know if you've ever done a food diary. Try to figure out, nutritional content of lily buds and wood ears, it's like can't find it, So it's been different. And, it's like go home and be Cantonese, Chinese, Cantonese, go out in public and you have to be American. You have to, and you have to interpret a lot for your parents. You have to interpret what foods there are. You have to go with your parents to interpret for healthcare and just find things. And my parents picked up a lot. They really knew money, but yeah, they caught on to and they taught us currency and all that. But just to explain to them things every day that we take it for advantage, or even and then they have to teach the children, or the children have to teach the parents, and it goes both sides. And and my relatives immigrated also, and having to teach them some things. And and it was a give and take type thing, that they would teach me some Chinese things and I would teach them some American things and that kind of thing. So it's been two cultures.
Thank you. So the question is how I feel being an Asian in America, correct? So I didn't grow up here. I'm a perfect first generation immigrant. So if you ask me whether I feel American, the answer is absolutely no, because I still feel I'm a foreigner. But then the next question is whether you feel comfortable living in America. The answer is depend on the context. Professionally, I happen to work with Americans more than Vietnamese, because I make history everywhere I go so far. I'm the first Vietnamese student in the dental school in the international program of the CU. I'm CU alumnus. I'm the first Vietnamese student. And then in my residency for specialty training, also the first and still the only Vietnamese. And then back to CU as a faculty, I'm still the only Vietnamese. Then on the personal level, do I feel included? Yes, but I have to earn that. Then the question is whether you put the effort to make yourself included, or to be successful, or to belong to your profession, right? Then on the personal level, that is from my heart. Whenever I go to any public places, if people didn't treat me well, the first instinct I think is because I'm an Asian. I do. So if some person happened to say something not nicely to me, the first thing I thought is because I'm the Asian. I could be paranoid, but I don't know whether I'm right or not, who can be the mind reader, right? About the people who didn't treat me well, right? But at the end of the day, I realized that I have more of American friends than Vietnamese friends. I have more American students than Asian students. I have more American colleagues than Vietnamese colleagues. Then we live in America. Nobody is from here except for Native American. Then everybody is come from somewhere, and I'm not the exception, right? Then why do I feel that people didn't include me? It's just because of uh, my like inner thought at some point when I didn't receive the right treatment. It could be the issue could be from my side, it's not from other people. And then I realized that the Vietnamese community is so small, right? Chinese community might be a little bit bigger than the Vietnamese community, or the same for Filipinos or any Cambodians or Laotian or any. The whole Asian American population only count for 7%. Okay, then of course we feel we are minority, right? Because we are in a smaller group. But my message is that we have good people and bad people out there. Being included or not is also from yourself too. You have to make the effort. Professionally, I feel included. To be honest, I'm the perfect second languager, but I don't think students disrespect me for that. And I just became the chair of the credential committee for the American Academy of Fixed Prosthodontists. That is my specialty. Then I'm the top person in the society in my specialty nationwide. Then do I feel included? I do, right? So I think we still deal with the discrimination somehow, somewhere with some people, but not all. Then how do we make those people include us? That is a huge question. A huge question. How do we answer that? We need a mission, right? That mission is beyond any individual effort. It has to be our effort together to spread our words, right? People should be treated the same regardless where they from, how they look, what religion they follow, and so on. It sounds a little bit corny, but it's true. And that mission, I think it should be an endless mission. And I hope we all together can help each other and can spread the words and make us feel more comfortable and more insider in the most diverse country that we live in. Thank you.
Well, those are some profound words. and a wonderful way to end our panel conversation. I don't think I could have said it any more eloquently. So before our Zoom folks log off, we want to just remind everybody that they're going to be sent an evaluation to complete. At this point in time, for those of you that are in person, we still have the gallery that will be open for viewing, as well as snacks available. And if you want to ask questions of our panelists, please feel free to come up and do so. Thank you all so much. Let's give a huge round of applause. Thank you. And our only ask is please don't bring the food near the cultural items because they're quite delicate and we don't need grease smeared all over the stuff. Thanks.